Thank you very much for purchasing the online course. This is an opportunity for you to now develop your skills from foundational level and start to produce your own haute couture beaded garments. This is the garment that we're going to be working on throughout the duration of this course. You can choose your own colour palette and your own supplies, either the ivory or the gold fabric. For this course, I'm going to be using the gold fabric, but this is a sampler for the ivory. You can also choose your own beading kits in the ivory or the gold, or you can have a mixture which is featured on this garment here. Please print out the PDFs, they're very useful. You'll have a lot of information there in terms of the pattern grading, the sizing, the colour chart for the beads, and also the geometric pattern designs that you'll need to trace out onto the fabric. So here are the A3 pieces here. So just make sure these are printed out. They need to be true to size, and the best way to do that is that when you take it to the printers, measure your square in the corner to make sure that it's 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters. That covers the framework for the geometric pattern, which will be featured on the garments. Plus, you'll also have the colour charts with all of the supplies which will be featured in the beading kit that you can buy online. Very useful information. Again, you'll also have the collar pattern design which we'll be adding onto the garments. So thank you very much once again, and I hope you enjoy the course. I'm going to go through the pattern in a bit more detail. So when you receive your PDF, you'll actually receive a large file which will be an A0 file. So you'll need to take it to a printers that will print out on size A0. So this is what your pattern piece will look like. It has been graded accordingly from size 6 to 16. Have a look at the PDF and look at the measurements for the bust, the waist and the hips. When you cut your pattern out, you will need to look at the appropriate sizing and just follow the dash line here so you know which one that you're following. When you make this garment, you're going to spend a long time beading the garments, making the garments. So I really recommend you make up a toile first. So the first thing to do is, once you've traced out the pattern, you need to make the relevant alterations. The best thing to do is to look at which measurement is closest to your bust measurement. So once you know on the bust, okay, that's close to my measurement, it's much easier to alter the waist and the hips from there. Consideration is the thickness of the collar. Also, the beadwork will create a bit of tightness across the fabric, so there'll be no give here. Another consideration is it gaping here? And also at the back, you might want to just check to see if it's gaping here or it feels a bit tight. Work with the seam allowances, the side seams and the back seam that you already have in the pattern. So you want to think about the side seams here, and also you've got the centre back here, and the centre back obviously enables you to take in and take out at the back. Make up the second toile. When you make up the second toile, use a different fabric. Ideally, you could use something similar like a silk dupion. So I actually made this up in a linen fabric, and I just adjusted the collar, and I also adjusted the gaping here because it was just gaping a little bit on my back. So just think about those alterations. Another consideration might be that you might have a long torso, so you might need to lengthen the pattern through the waist, or you might have a short back. So you might, when you do your toile, you might notice, oh, I've got some fabric gathering here. That means you need to shorten the pattern through the waist line at the back. Okay, so they're just a few tips to make up the pattern. So as you can see here, I've done it on dot and cross paper, which I do recommend. And I've marked my darts, my waistline. Make sure you put all of your notches in. And that includes the notches here And in red pen, I've actually added the geometric markers for the beadwork and where that will be going. Okay, that will be clear on your pattern. So again, if you do alterations, you also have to consider that a little bit. So just making sure that where the seam allowance is, the beadwork finishes at least 1.5 centimeters away from the edge. So as you can see here, the beadwork just sits away from the edge. You don't want it too close. So just a few little tweaks here and there. Remember to always add your grain line. That enables you to line up the grain line with the fabric to keep everything straight to the grain. This is the back panel here. And I traced out 2 back panels because usually you can cut the fabric on the fold. That will give you 2 backs, but you may be working with a different fabric, which might be more delicate. So you don't want to fold the fabric. You want to keep the fabric flat and then trace out 2 of the back pieces. So remember, you've got your marker for where your zip will finish as well. 4 centimeter hem, make sure you draft in your darts, and then also make sure you've got the markers for your collar. This is the collar here. I've traced out the pattern. And another thing that you should do is when you trace this out onto the fabric, you can use an awl or another way to punch holes in the fabric. And all I did was literally just punch the hole along the line. So every couple of centimeters. This will become clear in the next step. So just punching your markers on the fabric. That will enable you to transfer the mark onto the fabric. Same thing I've done here is I've just punched the pattern on the holes here. Make sure you've punched the clear markers as well, so the center of the darts. Make sure you notch the pattern at the edge. That will help you to join it to the front piece. And also here you can see how I've actually punched the pattern to place my appliques, as well as marking it at the top. And the same with the cross, I've actually punched the hole there. So just spend a bit of time doing that for the pattern. You'll see when I line up the fabric, the relevance of doing that. But once again, just to emphasize the point is make sure you do make a good custom fit to start off with. Remember, this is a garment that will be in the wardrobe for 50 to 100 years. We're going to be using couture sewing techniques, which are very laborsome. So I do recommend you just have a bit of patience and you spend the time making up a couple of toiles just to get a really good fit. One other consideration, again, you may choose to wear a strapless bra or you may not have any padding in the garment. I've placed some bra cups inside this pattern, so that's optional. And the idea of that is when you do your toile, make sure you put the cups in because again, that's also going to restrict the movement. So it's going to make it a bit more tighter as well. So have a play around, take your time. So once you receive this course, that's the first course of action, is to make up a good fit for the garment.